This is the US Secret Service, and this is the President of the United States. To be able to smuggle firearms into that environment, which ups the ante even more. There should have been nothing left unturned in terms of even putting in significant numbers of individuals that could man every single door, every single window that could afford access to someone. Last night's events as they unfolded were particularly interesting in so much as it should have been anticipated, and it would have been anticipated by the Secret Service, that there could be individuals looking to disrupt the event, whether that be in a protesting way or whether it be through something far more malicious like another attempt on the president's life. So in this instance, again, it was being held at a third-party location at the Hilton Hotel, where it's understood there were regular guests and therefore they didn't have entire control of the hotel or the entire usage and hiring of the hotel specifically and purely and only for the correspondents' dinner, which in itself will no doubt add complications to the security planning for something like this. And having done similar myself on many, many occasions for prominent persons in the public eye, including former heads of state, I can certainly say that you will have to go tooth and comb through not only the regular security preparations and planning that you would regularly need to do, but you also need to consider those third parties with possible malicious intent who may choose to book into the hotel or to visit the hotel as a guest visitor or in some capacity or shape or form, to ensure that your security planning encapsulates all those rogue elements which could potentially make your entire plan fall down. There are questions that could be raised as to what security is actually afforded to the guests of the correspondent dinner. And that security would inevitably be exceptionally high, bearing in mind that all of these people present will have come on special invitation from the President of the United States himself. The first thing that we certainly hear is as the counter-assault team take their positions in a defensive stance at the front of the stage and at the front of the stage table, there are commands to everybody in the room to get down, to get low, to get under the tables. Now, that is pretty much a standard operating procedure in these kinds of situations for a number of reasons. Not only to hopefully evade any potential stray fire that could be either sent by a perpetrator or by the counter-assault team themselves, or potentially if there was an explosive. And again, shielding from any kind of debris, any fragmentation from that device. Again, the more safeguarded they can be, the better. But security will also work in rings. And where and how this is most astounding in how this perpetrator managed to get into the building is that when you're securing a venue like this, you are securing it like ever-decreasing rings from the outer fabric of the building, including any possible way from fire escapes, fire exits, delivery entrances, main entrances, any possible way that someone can get into the building, that there is a control on that environment. Either it is entirely locked and it is alarmed, or it is managed by individuals who will verify, especially when it may be deliveries into the kitchen, to ensure that everybody coming in can be vouched for, has been vetted, has been checked, and does have the suitable ID to be there. So the protection for those within the main ballroom itself would have been, again, another layer of security, and there would have been Secret Service members not only inside but also outside the doors of the ballroom to protect against any other individual coming in there. However, one may then say, why do they need to all shrink to the floor in their ball gowns and their evening finery? Well, again, better to be safe than sorry. Inevitably, there are going to be a lot of questions over the footage that shows J.D. Vance being evacuated from the main stage prior to the president himself. However, one's got to understand that although the US Secret Service will be working in its entirety, and that includes groups like the counter-assault team, who specifically were the individuals that, as I understand, intercepted the threat himself, each of the component parts will look at their designated principal. So J.D. Vance's Secret Service protection team will only be looking after J.D. Vance. Likewise, the Secret Service detail looking after President Trump will only look after President Trump. So in simplicity and in a simple explanation, if, for example, something was to happen to J.D. Vance and he didn't have a security team, but there was a security team literally feet away from him that were responsible for President Trump, they would be in breach of their duties of protecting the president to react or respond to anything that might be happening to the vice president. There is also the consideration that one needs to make that J.D. Vance is the immediate de facto contingency in the event of the president being indisposed or removed from office in some shape or form. And therefore, they have to look at their continuity plan to ensure that the protection of that contingency is secured. And the last point I would probably make on this is, as we've seen with President Donald Trump historically, when he has had attempted assassination attempts made on him in the past, he has been very triumphant and robust in his response and reaction to these situations. Unlike where we have seen previous presidential assassination attempts, where the Secret Service will bundle onto their principal, move them off what we call the X, which is the position they're standing on or sitting at when that assassination attempt is made, and removing them from that environment and that location to somewhere secure. I believe that President Trump is pretty savvy to the media that this no doubt would generate. And his immediate thinking would have been, I am not going to leave this stage unless I really have to. Because, again, he doesn't want to display, and it would be to the world, any kind of weakness or vulnerability in this kind of instance.
At approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. It does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time.
The defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. But make no mistake, there will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation.
In terms of this individual and the perpetrator, again, it's one of those things where it's sometimes the most obvious, which is the reasons for why it's taken place. And although it is very early stages and no information has been as yet determined, the fact that they had any radical beliefs or possible radicalization, it is way too early to say at this point in time. And subsequent investigations, forensic digging on his digital footprint, on his postings, on any forums that he may be a member of, even conversations he may have had with his colleagues at work or his social circles. Again, this information all has to be gathered together like a jigsaw puzzle to put together to try and understand what motivated a teacher from California to travel all the way to Washington, managed to plan an operation so intrinsically well to defeat the US Secret Service in their security of that venue, and also to be able to smuggle firearms into that environment, which ups the ante even more. So the question of the firearms, Again, more information will have to be confirmed in time, but at this stage it's understood that there were a number of different weapons that this perpetrator had with them. And again, for what purpose, whether it be to target specific individuals, to cause an impact to the event, maybe even with the belief that they would never get close enough to the president to cause them personal harm. And again, state of mind is going to be another important contributing factor as to whether this individual was either mentally unwell or maybe incentivized or nullified by drugs, by alcohol, or by any other kind of medication. If it is government-led and it's government-funded, no expense will be spared. And therefore, there is less scope or room for failure for a government-funded team than there would be necessarily for a private team. This is the US Secret Service, and this is the President of the United States, probably one of the most divisive persons in the world right now, with a large and long list of individuals that would wish him harm. And as a direct result, there should have been nothing left unturned in terms of even putting in significant numbers of individuals that could man every single door, every single window that could afford access to someone. We've seen, certainly in some of the footage that has been released around this event, that there were members of National Guard. I would not rely on another third party, let alone the National Guard, to provide any effective level of security other than visual deterrent. I would be using my own people to manage and control all the access to this venue. I think the one thing that will come from this will be very little visual change to the protection around Donald Trump to the untrained eye. For those of us within professional security, we may see that there are certain changes, small changes and adjustments to his personal security. But much of this may come down to the selection of venues and locations around how he will be protected when he is meeting with foreign dignitaries. And what is interesting, and I think probably the first evidence of any changes that may be made, will be with this imminent visit by King Charles, His Majesty, when he comes to the United States. And we will see what security will be in place. And that is not only, obviously, as a host protecting a foreign dignitary like King Charles, but the royalty and specialist protection teams are, if not the best in the world, they will certainly be in sure measure in terms of protecting and making absolutely certain that His Majesty will be protected to the utmost level. And if there is any possible vulnerability within the planning or in that protective coverage afforded by the host, as the royalty and specialist protection team and as King Charles, I would hope, will listen to his team, he will not attend any event that they don't feel entirely comfortable with.